Welcome to another edition of Trunk and Tales as we navigate what is happening in the world of politics. I'm Stacy Smith, and I ask that you hit the like or the subscribe button on whatever platform you happen to be watching or listening to this podcast. Well, the off-year election is coming up next week, but there's nothing off as far as politics goes. We'll discuss the impact some of these elections might have. It's coming up in this edition of Trunk and Tales. And with me to talk about this is my panel of political analysts and experts, and they are. We'll begin with the former governor of Pennsylvania, a Republican, Tom Corbett. Mr. Corbett also served as the state attorney general for Pennsylvania and as the U.S. attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania. Welcome again, Tom. Good to have you with us.
Good to be here.
You also teach law, I should say, at Duquesne University, which is where you are right now.
That's exactly right. I'm here right now, and I'm also with a firm in Pittsburgh, Spillman, Thomas, and Battle.
All right, good. Also joining us on the Democratic side is the former Pennsylvania Auditor General, Eugene DePasquale. Eugene held that office for 8 years, and prior to that, he was elected to the state legislature. I should add that he has a new title now, and he is the state Democratic Party chairman. So welcome, Eugene, and congratulations on that title, and I'm sure you are inundated with work right now.
Or as Keith and the governor know, condolences. So,
no doubt about that. And you
now that we have the chairman, that's why we need 2 against 1, because he's the chairman. So it's going to take 2 of us.
We had the chairman before, too.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Since you mentioned Keith, and he's already spoken, Keith Schmidt was the state director for former Republican Senator Rick Santorum. Keith also consulted Santorum on his 2012 presidential bid. Keith has his own consulting firm now in Pittsburgh as well. Again, thank you guys for joining me. Let's go ahead and get started on this. And Eugene, I'm going to ask for your interpretation of this first, and that is you don't see this very often. It's become a heated race as such, is at least on the airways, of retention of 3 state Supreme Court justices in Pennsylvania, and they're all 3 were elected as Democrats, and there is a pretty good move out there to try to have people vote no, and that would be to not retain them. Give me your take on this from the Democratic side right now.
So the only one time in Pennsylvania history has there actually been a no vote. That was Russ Nigro, 2005, and a lot of that had to do with really backlash against the pay raise. Had, I don't think, very little to do with any of the justices' decisions. This one, I think there's probably 2 things. A, we're just in more highly polarized world today. And B, you have this Commonwealth Foundation funded in large part by a guy named Jeff Yass, who decided to put a lot of money into the no campaign. And so we're fighting back, and I believe we're going to win this, but it'll be closer than it normally is. Because, you know, as Keith and the governor know, when there's money involved in this and you put ads on the airways and digital and spending, it can just rally the bases of both parties. I think the main reason why this is happening is that there are actually 3 openings, not 1. I think that drove a lot of this.
I would agree with that. The last time we did with Russ Nigro, Sandra Schultz Newman was also on the ballot and up for retention at that time. She was Republican. Russ was a Democrat. She barely won, but she did and got a second term. But also, I think people are now starting to think about these a little bit more because they're more informed. They have social media that's talking about it. The social media is talking about the decisions that these justices have made and how they affect whatever issue that they're interested in. When Nigro lost, he lost completely because of something that he didn't have any involvement in, and that was the pay raise. It was called the midnight pay raise at the time, and people still talk about that. So in this one, you really have both sides saying yes or no, and I travel all Pennsylvania, and there are yes or no signs everywhere. So I think it's going to be close. I would be surprised if it happens. And I think Keith could probably comment on this. The turnout in this race is not going to be high. It just never is on these kind of races. And to have the retention vote with this, I think actually helps the incumbents on this. Or then you might say it hurts the incumbents because the people coming out to vote are motivated to vote against them. Or are they motivated to vote for them? That's the issue.
Well, I would suggest that the all roads lead to Donald Trump. And in the Donald Trump era of the last generation or half a generation, last 10 years, it's a very litigious country. And now for the first time, politicians and Democrats and Republicans on both sides of the aisle understand how judges have effect on election law and make determinations and all of a sudden that's becoming a very narrow focus on what they do. They do a lot of things, but what gets press is all the debates over absentee ballots and proving people on the ballot, and that's how the average Joe, both in the Democratic and Republican Party, view these very lofty positions. And again, they do much more than that, but that's what we're laser focused on. And now that there is such an intense division in America on both sides of the aisle, where we don't disagree, there is a distrust, and unfortunately, the word hatred comes in. I mean, it's an ugly time. We all admit that it's an ugly time. It's so now this is just another example of the divisiveness. They're using this race for the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania to air their a lot of other opinions based on party registration and where the Republicans want to go and where the Democrats want to go. And even if it's close, it's because of the election law stuff. I mean, I'm just telling you. Absolutely. I mean, he just said there's only one example in '05 in the history of Allegheny County. No one's ever lost retention since the 1700s for judge. It's something that never happened. If it's close, it's a story. I mean, because it's never close. But now, I mean, listen. The Gov's part of a Tuesday morning group I get together at La Prima in the Strip District outside of Pittsburgh. And for 2 weeks in a row, different people brought up the retention races. Like, this is something they're talking about. I mean, whether it's I'm a hard vote yes or and both of them were two different opinions. 2 weeks ago, it was why they're voting yes, and this week it was why they're voting no. So it's definitely a topic that's a front burner issue, and all eyes probably on Election Day in Pennsylvania are going to be on that race.
Keith, I'm going to have to.
I'm going to just follow up on Keith's
go ahead.
point. I've been voting since I was 18 years old. I've clearly voted in these retention races before. This is the first time in my life I'm actually going to be cognizant of like how I'm voting before I go into the booth. Like, I'm just being honest about that.
Yep. No, I think Keith, you hit on something like that. And I'm kind of quoting Governor, one of your colleagues at Duquesne, and that's Bruce Ledowitz, had a column back in September or early October about this particular retention race, and he points out that the most egregious examples of partisanship in his opinion, by the Democrats on this court were the new congressional district map of 2018, which looked a lot like aiding Democrats in retaking the House. Also, what he called the unjustified 3-day voting extension in the 2020 presidential election, which the Supreme Court effectively reversed, and then upholding Governor Tom Wolf's emergency orders during COVID-19 when, by the court's own analysis, the emergency statute looked to be unconstitutional. It goes on with a couple of other things. He also says that the Republicans are not pure in any of these kind of decisions as well. But I guess this goes back to where I'm trying to go with this, is that as from in the past, it may have always been political. I don't know, but it never seemed like the Supreme Court was that political here. But you are elected. You're laughing, Tom. But you are elected by party. So I think you just have to go with this. And maybe you're right, Keith, that it's whatever the swing of the popular part of the nation or state is at that time. Governor, you were laughing. Go ahead.
Well, I'm laughing because the vast majority of the electorate doesn't pay attention to this at all.
Yeah.
They don't understand how the justices work. They don't know that it's a 10-year term. They do know when decisions affect them, either directly or indirectly. And they get mad, and they want to know who to get mad at. Well, if they're mad about any of those decisions that came down, particularly at the COVID issue, that's one where they could go, these three justices supported that, or I think all three supported it. This is why I'm voting against them. It gives them a reason to vote against somebody. It's not an easy thing to say, no, I don't want that person. You got to have a reason. And there were certain circumstances there that, I could see voters, particularly people in the middle, the independent voters. Remember, they don't get to pick the candidates in the primary. So now this is their chance to vote. And they could well be, and I think that's why you're seeing all these ads, they could well be the deciding factor as to whether these three candidates or the three justices are retained. And justices make decisions. I made decisions. I can get reelected because I made a couple decisions. They make decisions that can affect everybody for a long period of time. This is the only time that the public has a chance to speak out and do something about that decision in their mind.
Yep.
And I think what they're trying to do here, I mean, we're all uncomfortable with electing judges. But merit selection has all kinds of flaws too. But it's a system we have. We don't like the fact we have to elect them. I often thought we should have to put a paragraph under every one of their names telling me about their qualifications, instead of picking gender, geography, and ethnicity. I could actually know something about the person I'm voting for. I mean, that's just the way it is. But now all of a sudden, this lofty court that does all kinds of things that we know nothing about, we do know how politics affect us. So all of a sudden, that's the narrative for Republicans. These people, whether it be gerrymandering, election laws, voting deadlines, that now they were able to connect it. They were able to make a connection to say the Supreme Court does matter, and here's why. And this is another line in the sand, and part of the divisiveness of America. So all of a sudden, it's an important race. I mean, it really is. It's sort of a bellwether. It's something that we're going to look at going into next year.
That's right. I do think what has added to that is that the way the U.S. Supreme Court has gone, particularly on the left, particularly on the issue of abortion, you now look at it. I hear from Democrats all the time that maybe would not have normally thought about, why would I care about the Supreme Court Justice of Pennsylvania having a position on abortion? Well, when Roe was overturned, a lot of this then fell to the states. And again, a lot of us, maybe even the governor, myself, just from our legal hat side of it, don't want these judges viewed. It bothers me just as an American. Every time now you see on CNN or MSNBC or Fox, an Obama-appointed judge, a Biden-appointed judge, a Trump-appointed judge. I remember growing up, that never used to happen. But now it is all the time. They are literally, for good or for bad, and I think a lot of it's bad, they are literally identified with their partisanship, which is a part of our legal system that we're losing with that happening. But Keith is right and the governor's right. They have had thousands of decisions in their 10 years on the court, and we're literally going to talk about, even us as people that both have a legal and political background, 7 decisions that they've made out of thousands that will likely tilt the balance in this election.
And Eugene brings up the point of where the Democrats are spending their money. They're spending money on abortion. I mean, they're spending money on a woman's right to choose. I mean, that's where their millions and millions of dollars are going. Ours are going on the election side. 2 different issues, 2 different ways to draw out their vote. But I see it 10 times a day. I see the Democratic ads about a woman's right, protecting women, the abortion issue. They understand that's how to electrify their base.
There's an interesting aspect to this, and that is that the governor now is weighing in and doing commercials, and he's out there. I never had that happen while I was there. It just didn't come up. But there's multiple reasons for him to do. He's supporting the members of his party, but he's also supporting decisions that have been going the way he would like to see them go. It's no secret that he looks for higher office after this. He certainly doesn't want to see a Supreme Court, the members change and add, for instance, 3 Republicans. If all 3 were to be tossed, he would have the right to appoint people to fill out until the next general election, which is general election for the court, which is actually 2 years away. But he has to be confirmed by the Republican Senate. So there'll be a lot of, if any one of them are term limit or taken off the court, there'll be a lot of deals going on over in Harrisburg. It'll be interesting theater.
I want
Well,
to
there's
move
some
on.
tea leaves there, Gov, because the fact that he is, I don't remember another governor ever doing anything here. Because no matter, if you choose to do that, everything, you expend some political capital. All right. You know, you only have so much and you decide where you're going to spend your political capital. The fact that the sitting governor of Pennsylvania has spent political capital on this tells us this race is more interesting than it should be. Because but for him to enter the fray here and be willing to spend political capital, because he pretty much cares about himself, he must see that this is something worth spending political capital on.
I agree. Better said.
This is an ad that came in my mail just the other day, and in relation to what you're talking about, it's for Christine Donahue, and over on the side over here, if I hold it up correctly, there it is, Governor Josh Shapiro.
Oh, wow.
And she said, proudly endorsed by Governor Josh Shapiro. So just to show how things are even, I also got this, you can term limit the Supreme Court. I'm not quite sure who sent this one out, but that's, I'm sorry. It's
Paid for by.
Commonwealth Leaders Fund.
There it is. He was talking about that.
And there's one more that my wife got. And it says, Dear Sharon, please remind your friends and family to vote in the Tuesday, November 4th election. Vote yes to retain all 3 Supreme Court justices. They're Democrats. And it's signed by Denise. My wife has no idea who Denise is. And it's mailed from Boston, Massachusetts. So there you go. What's going on with this state Supreme Court race? I find it very, very interesting. Let's move
Gene,
on to...
what are you doing working in Boston?
Look, if I was up there, I would have at least tried to see a Patriots game or something like that, or a Celtic game.
Well, this is not one of the topics I said we were going to talk about, but as the governor and you, Keith, and now Eugene, with your position, how often do you know who's trying to back candidates or retention votes or something like that?
Sometimes, sometimes I'm going to just, I don't know, Keith, I'm curious your take on this. Sometimes an ad will pop on the air and the political nerd in me will then run up to the TV to look at that bottom corner to see who's paying for the ad. Because whenever I see an ad that is clearly pro a candidate or against a candidate, and you can see it's their own campaign ad, that's one thing. But when it looks like it's something odd, like it's this new twist on an election, it's a weird attack, to me it's usually fascinating who's paying for the ad.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add one other thing? Since we're talking about justices? In addition to that, we have, and it's very important to the county, we have 8 vacancies on the court, Common Pleas Court. So, and we have, I think there are 14 candidates. 6 are listed, I think, on both sides, and then the other ones. The parties put up their candidates. In this one, though, the individual candidates, they can run on both the Republican and the Democrat at the same time.
Yeah, for county.
Right. Some of them got it, some of them didn't. But when you're going to vote, please take a look at those candidates. Frankly, and I will make this public, I believe, and we haven't done it, we should have a constitutional amendment in Pennsylvania that says you have to be a practicing lawyer for 10 years.
Oh, I agree with that. I fully agree with the governor on that.
Because we have some people that have run in the past with absolutely no experience, and we suffer because of that.
Sure.
Look, I am more willing to have someone who's a complete neophyte be in the, I'm talking about me as a voter, complete neophyte in the U.S. Senate than someone who is a complete neophyte, passes the bar exam, and then runs for magistrate or judge. It really bothers me. And it's the one position that I feel, obviously president and some of these others, but to me, I want someone on that court, just as me as a voter, who has some also life experience as well, who knows how to balance the law and also the real life circumstances. Because the governor and Keith know this every day. If you are sitting on that bench, you have sometimes people's lives in your hands, and if you have no life or legal experience, I don't know how you handle that.
Anybody who has dealt with, or indirectly or directly with family court, will know how that is.
Sure.
And the issue is, when we elect our judges, we elect them for 10 years. And then they come up for a retention vote. I think there are a couple that were elected 10 years ago at the Common Pleas Court level. They're up for retention this year. And you don't see anybody campaigning pro or con on that one. Supreme Court is the one because it affects the entire state. But I tell everybody, they complain about the courts. I said, well, you have to pay attention to them. You have to pay attention to who the candidates are.
But as Keith points out, we don't necessarily know what any of these candidates really stand for, although you can't run for judge and say, I'm in support of doing X, Y, or Z in a ruling. I mean, that's
Yeah, but you can give your resume.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's what we want. We want to know your resume. I want to know not only are you a lawyer, what kind of lawyer are you? Have you ever been in court? You know, I mean, are you a real estate attorney? You know, I don't know that I want you to judge a criminal case. You know, I mean, I need to know a little more about you. And Eugene's point about, you know, money spending and getting all these ads and whatnot. It's just, listen, it's a glorious time in media in media firms and consulting business. I mean, the fact that there is so much divisiveness in America can't be any better for these groups. They're making tens of hundreds of millions of billions of dollars to the likes of which we've never seen. And they're spending money. Listen, we're four gray-haired guys. I'm the youngest and I have the most gray. I mean, we actually watch TV, but the amount of money they spend on TV when no one's watching anymore, you know, it's hard to believe what they charge and the money they're willing to spend and put on TV for the very small audience compared to when I began in 1980.
But there's a good reason for that.
Because of seniors watching
Exactly.
TV and being a high turnout.
TV
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it, but the prices should change. They're not touching even as many people anymore. But they're getting away with it. You know?
Look, I think that even with seniors, more people are shifting over to streaming.
Yes.
They're watching it through YouTube. That is, every day someone is cutting the cable cord. Every day.
Yep.
Right. Right.
And every day the price to have cable keeps going up too. So I don't
Is that the whole show, Stace? Now are we done?
Raise the price.
I didn't know what you said, Governor.
I said because there's less people, they need to raise the
Well,
price.
that's probably it. No, that's not the whole show yet.
This was the longest, section version.
I expected it to go like 3 minutes.
You cut out 15 minutes to 5 minutes, and it went 15.
Yep, exactly right.
Carved
But
out.
this ties into it. And that is because of the decisions that a state Supreme Court makes, not only in Pennsylvania, but wherever it might be, in regards to election law, as you pointed out, Keith, then the election of those state Supreme Court justices or their retention can become sort of a national issue. Also, coming up next week in the primary, or I mean in the general election, we have the New York mayor's race, we have the Virginia governor's race, we have the New Jersey governor's race. So my question to you guys here is, do these elections have any significance and as to how things are going nationwide, or are they just individual elections that are taking place and each individual state is just, you know, reacting to who the candidate may be or whether they're going to retain justices?
I think that this year the races are going to matter because to a certain extent it will be a referendum on the first 11 or first 10 months of the Trump administration. People are going to come out to vote either yay or nay, and they're going to be looking at the policies of the various candidates. Traditionally, Virginia and New Jersey, they always have this in what we call an off-year election, but it can tend to be a bellwether for what's coming down the road in 28. In 28. So, you know, we'll see, in 26. We'll see what happens when they get elected. The New York race is a little bit different. And it has a lot to do with the way they pick their candidates and the selection. You know, if independents were able to vote in the primary, it would have probably been different. I don't think they can there. But they had so many different people involved. You have two candidates, one a former governor actually running for mayor of New York, and I'm not sure why he did that. And then somebody who, I guess this is, to my knowledge, his first run for any political office, and he wants to be the executive of the largest city in the world, as far as I'm concerned.
I believe he was elected to the.
He was an assemblyman.
Yeah, assembly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, look, I think there may be national messaging that goes along with the result of the New York mayor's race. I mean, both on the left and the right. I actually think not so much who wins Virginia, New Jersey, but I think the margins will be telling. If
Yep.
Spanberger, for example, wins in New Jersey by 4 or 5, I think she's still the governor, but that's an indication that the winds aren't blowing heavily against the president. More, but if it's 8, 9, 10 or more, that's it. I think I think Spanberger's going to win in Virginia, and she's still the governor. And it's just weird there to me. I've always thought it weird that they can only do one term there. But I think the margin will be telling as to how big of a backlash against the president.
Gene, that's what Pennsylvania used to be
Yeah,
until Shapp in the 60s.
that's right.
But generally, New Jersey and Virginia are blue states generally. I mean, every once in a while, we get a personality or a woman or a man who makes an impact and can basically steal that race for a term or two. But these aren't red states. These aren't in any way, shape, or form consistently red states. For all intents and purposes, it does look like Virginia's really not in play for us. I mean, they're trying to make it might be tighter, but we'll see how tight it is. Well, right now we hold the Virginia, so that's going to be a loss for us. No matter how you stack it up, we're going to lose a race. But New Jersey is interesting. I mean, the last 2 weeks, that's become a race. And make no mistake, New Jersey's a blue state. I mean, so if the Republicans are looking for a bellwether, it's Jersey, because I'm not so sure why we should be in that race either. But I think the polling as of this morning I checked was margin of error now. I mean, so it could go any way. It's down to turnout. And then you flip to New York, and listen, the New York race is over. But it's the best story for Republicans. I mean, the messaging there is a gift. I mean, we're all trying to make the case that the Democrats have moved completely to the left, progressive and socialist, and this is a gift that keeps on giving, because it might be I say that tongue in cheek, just the mayor of New York, but outside the president, I mean, there's not too many offices that get more national and international coverage than the mayor of New York. And it might not be the top 50 most populated cities in the world, but it is clearly probably the most important city in the world because of its trappings with the international community and finance and law and whatnot. So the fact that this crazy man's going to take over is going to be a gift that keeps on giving. And my own self, as someone who's a registered Republican in the Trump era, you got to worry about what's going to happen, because when that happens, there's going to be some sort of power grab by the administration in New York. They're going to try to do something here to lessen that blow. I'm not sure what they can do, but he's going to try to play in New York, because he's going to say this all went awry. The people of New York, can't put up with this, and that could add to the mayhem nationally when Mandami ends up becoming officially the winner in New York.
All right, Keith, Eugene, I'll give you the last word on this subject.
No, I do think along the lines of, the broader implications, I think one thing that I think is an interesting nugget, I go back 10 years ago, maybe even 15, I do think Keith is right. Virginia and New Jersey are both blue states. But New Jersey is actually starting to trend to be a little bit more competitive, while Virginia is trending to be a little bit more blue. And if you'd have told me in 2004 Virginia would be closer to being a safe Democratic state than New Jersey, I would have thought you were on something. But again, I think they're both blue states. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it if they're both closer than they should. But New Jersey has been getting more competitive, and Virginia less so. And I think that's an interesting tell as to what's happening with both parties' coalitions, where we as Democrats are now doing better in the suburbs, but I think that South Jersey portion of New Jersey is getting more competitive. And I just think there's more to that than what people realize.
All right, we're about out of time, so I'll jump to this one, and that is that President Trump has agreed that he is not going to run, and is not allowed to, allowed to run for a third term by way of the Constitution. So if he is now ruling himself out at this point, then give me a couple of candidates you guys think will be the ones who do emerge in the 28 presidential election. Governor, I'll start with you.
Well, obviously the vice president is going to be a consideration. So is the Secretary of State. I'm sure that Governor of Florida, DeSantis, will throw his hat in there. There's probably some U.S. senators I'm not thinking of at the moment that will do it. But they shouldn't be doing it right now. And I think I'm glad that the president finally realizes that the Constitution matters and that he can't run again. I think it's also going to depend on whether he puts the thumb on the scale and says, "This is who I want."
Yeah.
Do his people go in that direction? Does he do that on behalf of Vance? If he doesn't do that on behalf of Vance, what's that message? But I think the speaker or the Secretary of State has been doing a wonderful job with the tools he has available and the issues that are in front of him.
Yeah, I'll echo the governor on this. First of all, let's shout out to Keith, the governor, and myself. We told everyone a year ago he couldn't do this. So he's just now listening to what the governor, Keith, and myself had said. True. I mean, this isn't even a debatable point. I find it amusing that we even were talking about it. Now, having said that, moving forward,
I agree.
Well, as the Democratic side, we are going to have a wide open race. I think the Republican side, I think Vance is a heavy favorite, but we have a long time to go before people start to vote. The only thing that dramatically will change my opinion on that is if the president actually puts his foot on the gas for someone else. And who that would be, I can't tell you. But if he doesn't come out for Vance and comes out for someone else, then I will change my opinion. But all things left to be as they are now, I think Vance is a huge favorite.
Or he could do what President Obama did in 2016 and not endorse anybody.
He can't do that.
No.
That's not in his makeup.
Capable of doing that.
I don't think that the president ever seriously intended even thinking about running for a third term. But to the fact that he could irritate the media, irritate the Democrats, of course he's going to do
I
it.
think that's
And let me tell you, the other part of the realization is he's 80 years old, and he is to his credit, he is living a manic schedule. It is already catching up with him, and he has to feel it. And he knows at 83 or 84, that dog don't hunt. I mean, he's going to be ready to go, whether he wants to or not. He's going to be physically unable to. We saw what second terms do to everybody. He's not going to escape that. And he has to be careful because he has to keep his wits about him, especially with how critical he was of his predecessor. On the Republican side, it's easy. It's going to be Vance and Rubio. It's going to lock in. That's their best chance, and it's hard to believe that this early we know that's the ticket. That is the ticket. I don't even think the governor of Florida runs, to be honest with you. The Democrats, it's a lot dicier. As I've said many times, it has to be somebody that could run against 24, that had nothing to do with 20. If you had any trappings in 24, if you endorsed her or you ran an ad or you went on social media, you're done. That's why I keep on saying, look to Governor Beshear of Kentucky. He's an interesting cat. He's intelligent. He could run against Washington and the old-fashioned values of the Democratic Party. And outsiders like Carter, outsiders like Obama, outsiders like Clinton. That's the formula for Democrats in my lifetime. So it'll be an outsider either like Beshear or somebody like him somewhere in the country.
All right. Great discussion today, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us also. And if you happen to be watching or listening to this podcast on whatever platform you happen to be using, I urge that you hit the like or the subscribe button. Well, that does it again for this edition of Trunk and Tales. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you the next time.
Go vote.
See you, Stacy.
See you, Stacey.